Dugout Nation, welcome to the Dugout CEO podcast. Today, I am joined by Jamey Gordon, who is a partner and director of athletic development at Pro X Athlete Development, where they are focused on developing the next generation of professional athletes. Jamey is a former athletic trainer for USA Baseball and has a long list of professional athletes that he has worked with. He has unique insight in both sports performance business, and he has built a long-standing track record of expertise in athletic development and sports performance training. Jamey, welcome to the Dugout CEO podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, gosh, last time I saw you, I think it was a 17-year-old kid trying to figure out a way to get better in baseball and get bigger, faster, and stronger, and you actually made it happen. So I'm like, I got to get your success stories and tips and all that out to the world, and you helped me a lot in my life, and glad to have you here.
Oh, it's nice to be here, and I'm glad we were able to help you. That's kind of what it's all
And
about.
yeah, and gosh, and your wife was my seventh grade teacher years before that, which was even crazier. So I want to apologize. And I don't know how many years of therapy she had to go into because she had to work with me for that one long year. But teachers, coaches, they mean a lot. And I was talking to somebody the other day. We don't really remember who won the World Series 3 years ago, unless your team won. But we remember who our
Right.
seventh grade teacher was, or our favorite coach, or our favorite trainer, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Jamey, tell Dugout Nation kind of who you are, your background, what you do, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy, an athletic trainer, and a certified strength and conditioning coach. Kind of all the continuum of what athletes need outside of physician and surgeons and stuff like that, which we try to keep them away from as best we can. Uh, been doing that since I started that in about 1995 when I became an athletic trainer. So it's been a long, fun road. I'm now on the north side of Indianapolis. I have a physical therapy business that we do primarily baseball players. We also train baseball players. We have a facility, 66,000 square feet, 2 full infields inside, a weight room, 11 batting cages, so, and then some administrative areas. So, and we're inside of the property of a park that has 26 baseball fields. So we also cover all the baseball fields with athletic trainers and things like that. So it's
Yeah,
a fun place
anybody
to
that
be
knows,
for sure.
yeah, anybody that knows Indiana baseball knows about you and what you guys have done and the impact that you've had. And you've worked with Major League Baseball players, NBA players,
Yep.
NFL players, all of that kind of stuff. What is it, Jamey, when you look at those people that are the best at what they do? What do you think it is that sets themselves apart?
Well, there's definitely an element of natural God-given talent and physiology. So, an NBA player who's 5'7" is probably not an NBA player. An NBA player who's 6'7" has a much better chance, and he didn't plan that for himself. So there's an element to that. But more than anything, and I've seen this with all the best baseball players that I've ever worked with, the ones that continually want to get better. Like, I love working with the guys that when they come in, it's literally, we'll have major league players here and they'll be in the rehab area or whatever, and we'll have a regular patient, high school kid, and the high school kid has no idea who that it's a major league player with them, because the major league player is talking about, how do I get better? What do you want me to do? What exercise do I need to do for this? How am I going to get back to throwing? How am I going to improve this? Whatever. So they have the mindset of always getting better. They're not in there talking about, oh yeah, when I was at Yankee Stadium, I did blah blah blah. They're just talking about getting better and just their normal everyday life and stuff like that. So those are the characteristics that I see in the very, very best players.
And what is it that and one of the things that you focus on is your philosophy is the why of the problem. As you help
Mm-hmm.
athletes, what is that why that you help them with?
So from my standpoint, I'm trying to figure out, why are they not performing physically well? Why are they having an injury? Why does something that they do cause pain or a mechanical inefficiency? So basically, my process looks at, how do they move, and then knowing through experience, education, whatever, all the bits and pieces that go into how they move. So kind of think of it as like the Macy's balloons, and they have all these people with these tethers, and the balloon is supposed to stay still and not tip over and all that kind of stuff, and everybody has to move down the street at the same pace. If somebody's not pulling, or somebody's pulling too hard, If no one knows who's doing that, then it's hard to figure out the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's hard to fix. So we look at all those bits and pieces based on how they move, what's the job they're trying to put their body through, and then knowing all those bits and pieces, we can pinpoint, that's the problem, so let's fix that, or that's the problem, so let's fix that, or it's a combination of all these things, and we have to get them stronger, more mobile, whatever, and then teach your body to, in your brain, to control it all now that it has those resources. So that gets down to the why, which then with something, so let's say like pitching, if somebody's having an arm problem or whatever, we figure out all those whys of how they move, and then the whys of the whys. So they're pitching, and how they're moving in pitching causes a problem. So we get down really to the bare details of what's going on, not just, oh, my elbow hurts. Well, then stop pitching and it won't hurt. No, that's not an option for most people. So
Well, I like that because a lot of people, whether it's, I help a lot of business owners and things, and there's an issue, but the real issue is multiple layers deep. So how are you able to get there? Like, what does that actually look like with, an athlete?
yeah, so there's a process that I learned in grad school and have since helped other students learn and things like that. It's called a movement systems impairment diagnosis. So it's basically a diagnosis of movement, and they're regionally specific. So if you came in and you're like, yeah, my elbow hurts, then I'll look at your shoulder, I'll look at your back, I'll look at your hips, I'll look at your knees, I'll look at your feet to make sure that there's nothing movement related in any of those far away areas that might cause your arm to move in a way that would cause it then to be hurt. So it's a whole body movement diagnosis process, and really just have to learn what kinds of things typically become a problem. So what bad movements are we looking for? What does good movement look like? So we have to be able to recognize, oh, yep, that's no problem. You're moving well, everything's normal. And then, like I said, all those bits and pieces for each bad movement, what causes those? It could be a strength issue, it could be a flexibility issue, it could be a joint issue, it could be just you have bad habits and you just move that way, and we just have to reteach you. So knowing all those criteria and then how to pare that down for that process. And it's surprisingly quick, actually. If you went to a physical therapist and they were going to test your rotator cuff and your labrum and all the ligaments of your elbow and your flexors and your core strength, it would be a really tedious process. But when we narrow it down by movement first, it guides us into. So you think of a funnel, we look at all the different things that could happen by movement, and we funnel that into what actually causes those bad movements, and then we can fix those easily. And we don't have to test everything because we'd have 99 good things looking for the one bad. We just look for the one bad and then go from there.
Got it. So let's talk about baseball. How'd you get involved, playing career, all that kind of fun stuff to where you are
Yeah,
today?
I actually got into physical therapy and athletic training through baseball. I'd gone to college as an undergrad back in the 1900s, and was planning on being a teacher and a coach, and played my freshman year in undergrad. Ended up having back surgery at the end of the season, and that was my first experience with an athletic trainer. It was my first experience with physical therapy. I thought, wow, this stuff's really cool. It incorporates all the body and how you move and fixing and helping people, and thought that was a really awesome kind of thing. And kind of figured out that a lot of what I do is actually coaching. It's one-on-one. It's not in a team situation, but coaching people to move well. Why do they have to do this? Why do they do that? How do we help them improve? Encouraging them to stick with it when it gets tough, etc. So a lot of the stuff that I really liked about coaching, I get to do anyway. So that was kind of my first foray into the medical part of that part of baseball. Then I spent about a year I just had to be away from the game and be away from the field. It kind of tore me up to get close to a baseball field or watch it on TV or anything, because I missed it so much. And then at the end of my undergrad, I was asked to be the student athletic trainer for the baseball team. And I went back to it and just really loved diving into how to keep players healthy and being around the game again. And the sting had kind of worn off not being able to play. So then I went on to grad school, got my athletic training certification, went on to grad school at Washington University in St. Louis, started practicing, started doing sports medicine, et cetera, in the late 90s, and then kind of helped form the process or the idea of sports performance. That was kind of born out of, we had athletes who were hurt, and we wanted to keep them moving. And there's that gap between, yeah, my knee feels better, my elbow feels better, but I'm not really ready to play yet. That same gap exists even for people who aren't hurt. So there's that gap of improvement that when you're not good enough to play, you could also just not be good enough yet, period. So it's the same kind of stuff, which is kind of how sports performance, as we see it today, had evolved, and that all happened kind of in the early 2000s. Went through a period of actually doing sports performance and physical therapy up in the Fort Wayne area. My wife's job kind of brought us to the Indy area, and I got to work with St. Vincent Sports Performance, who was doing a lot of leading edge kind of sports performance things in the Indy area, and just kind of connected with lots of baseball people, major league players who were in the area, coaches who had travel teams. My son played, so I kept pretty active with that. So it was just kind of a continual evolution. Nothing that I really said, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E to make sure I get to Z. It was just, I'm going to let God show me the way, and I'm going to do what I need to do along the way.
Yeah. The results that you produce, right, get out, and then more and more people need help because you are an all-star at what you do. I mean, working with USA Baseball, tell me a little bit about that journey and experience.
Yeah, so I was in the Fort Wayne area, and I was working with some players, and a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, I have a friend who is in the administration of USA Baseball, and they could really use what you do." So, and this was, I think, 2008. I think it was 2008. It was the last time that baseball was in the Olympics before it was out in 12 and 16, I think. So it was out for 2 cycles. So the guy calls me up and says, "Yeah, we already have our Olympic staff, but we'd really love you to work with our 18U national team development process, whatever." So I went out and worked with them from 2008 to 2014. They kept asking me to be the head athletic trainer for them, but that requires another 2 weeks or more in the fall when they go and compete. I'm like, I just can't take that much time off work. So when I went to St. Vincent, they said, "Hey, why don't you just go do it? And they've always wanted you. You've always wanted to be there. It's a great experience. Just go do it." So they let me take that opportunity. So I did that in 2013 and 14. 2014, we won the Pan Am Games in Mexico. The life-altering thing there is we got caught in a hurricane, and we flew home on a Mexican cargo plane. So about 3 days later with no communication with the outside world. But yeah, that was a pretty interesting time. But it's been fun now to track guys that were in high school and, oh yeah, I worked with that guy, or you turn on a game. That's really what the enjoyment part of just turning on a random game when I've got guys that I worked with who play, and I get to see him like, oh yeah, he's a great kid or whatever. So really root for those guys when they're playing now.
Super cool. And then with, Pro X, what you're doing over there, just because you're great at your craft and producing results, it doesn't mean you're going to run a great business. And I see so many people that are, hey, I'm a great baseball instructor, but that doesn't mean they run a great baseball academy or a facility.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, I'm a really good chiropractor. It doesn't mean they run a really great chiropractic business that builds and scales. So you're good at what you do. What makes it where you're great at running a great business?
Well, it didn't start out that way. It's a lot of learning through normal physical therapy education. You don't get a lot of business instruction. So reading things, early on I read a lot about other businesses. So how did Starbucks start? How did Nike start? How did GM, Chrysler? What were all those things that they went through? And just reading books about the people who ran those businesses. Also, just books about leadership. The John Gordon books are really, really good. The Simon Sinek books of the Get to Your Whys and things like that. Just number one, am I in the right place? So if I'm not feeling the passion for either developing a business or helping athletes or just doing a rehab on a 70-year-old who had a spine fusion, if I'm not passionate about that, I need to figure out why am I not passionate about that. Might just be because I had a bad day, which fine, I'll get through that the next day. But if I'm not really finding the fulfillment in it, then that whoever I'm working with or the business that I'm working on or in isn't getting my best. And that's really just putting all those pieces together, my passion, what little things can I do to make sure we're going to take step one? All right, we got that step done. And then just reading it. I mean, business is a living organism. What we did this year may not work next year. We went through COVID and thought we were going to be totally hosed when we came out of it. And it turns out we ran a college summer league and we had 12 teams of 23 players who wanted to play in our summer league because we constructed it in a way that fit all the COVID guidelines and everything, while other leagues were all closed. So just trying to figure out, and that was fully born out of play. So how do we navigate the restrictions and safety and all that kind of stuff to get players to be able to play? And that was the whole genesis of it. It wasn't, can we make money at this? Can we set up a system that's going to get sponsorship? It was simply, let's get players playing. And it went great.
It's awesome. And what would you say, Jamey, is your like entrepreneurial superpower, the thing that you're really great at, running, building a business, right? What is that thing that you think sets you apart?
Well, I would hope that if you ask the people who are under my charge, they would say it's empowerment, that I try to figure out what people are really good at and what they're passionate about, and I don't get in their way. So I need to know what should be happening. So, our front desk person, I know what that job needs to be, but I'm not going to get in the way of how they do it. So I might check with them. How are you doing this? This is how I do it. Great. Is that working for you? Yep. Do you need anything from me to make that go better? Nope. All right, then we're good. Or, hey, how's this going? Well, I really need time to do blah, blah, blah. All right, let's figure out how to get you time to do that. Or I need this piece of equipment. All right, let's figure out how to get you that equipment so that it will turn out well. Or I might be asking an instructor, let's say I have a strength coach. We want this such and such equipment. Okay, why is that? How's that gonna help you be better at what you do? Well, it's just a new cool thing. Well, can we just use you as the new cool thing instead of this $30,000 piece of equipment and get the same results? Yeah, okay, then let's not do that. Or we need this piece of equipment. How's that going to help you? It'll help me measure and educate and whatever. Okay, great. Let's figure out a way to do that. So helping people do what they want to do with that same level of passion that I have from the 30,000-foot view that they can get done, I would hope is what they would say is the best thing. And then obviously the tricky part then is finding those people who have the passion for what they're doing, which isn't always easy. So
yeah. How have you been able to attract people to want to work with you guys?
Kind of a slow process. Our biggest hurdle is when we need either a lot of people or we need a lot of people really fast, because you really can't be as picky. We've gone through some evolution of people who we thought were really passionate and really good, and we had to part ways because their philosophies didn't end up with the same as ours in the end. And I don't know if that was necessarily because they didn't disclose as accurately as how that connected with our philosophy, or if it was just a learned issue. But in the end, we kind of sit down with them and like, listen, we all know this isn't comfortable. It's not going well. It's probably best that you go and do your thing in your way and we do our thing in our way, and we try to find someone else. But typically we hire people we know and who know us. So a physical therapist that I have working with me, he was a student of mine when my partner and I first started developing Pro X, and we had kind of come to the point where we're going to do this. So he was a student. He was one of the first people outside of me that I going to do this. And he said, well, I want to work for you. So we kind of went through a few years of not needing him until we did. And then I called him up and said, hey, we need you. And he's like, great. But I already knew him really well from having been his clinical instructor for 3 months. And he knew me well. So that's typically how we find people, is we either run into them and have some sort of working relationship with them, or they know us really well and then we get to know them, or vice versa. So.
And looking back over it, your list of accomplishments is a mile long. Somehow you got me a college scholarship, right? That in its own, realm is impressive. And I think, by the way, everybody that was in our class, I think they all played professional baseball but me. So I think I probably need more of a psychologist than I did somebody to teach me to run faster and throw harder and all that kind of stuff. Because I was kind of a mental midget out there. And looking back at it, the more and more people I interview that have made it to Major League Baseball, they were super strong, between the ears. What does that look like, Jamey? You have the physical side of it, but you also have the mental side of sports. What does that look like?
It depends on the sport a little bit. I've found that baseball players, hockey players have a much different perspective than, say, NFL players or NBA players. Their road to professional, when they look back at being a professional, so you look at an actual NBA player and NFL player, their road to get there was relatively short compared to a baseball player or a hockey player, or even some like tennis players who have a really long road to get there. They have lots of levels to get, but they just have to persist and keep grinding through the process, and understanding the player they are today might be similar to the player they are tomorrow, but shouldn't be the player they are in a year. So they have to play that long game. Whereas an NBA player, their road to the NBA is relatively short. It could be from the time they're 14 to playing in the NBA finals, let's say, could be 6 years, which is really, really short. The time between a 14-year-old player and a Major League Baseball player could be 15 years. So it's just one of those things that it's the process of the highest level of sports kind of dictates what you need to have mentally. Somebody like a golfer or somebody like that, the mental stress is very internal. So you have to learn how to handle your internal thoughts, feelings, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you're an NFL linebacker, you just rev yourself up and go crazy. You have to know where you need to be and all the intricacies of the position, but you don't have that internal anxiety as much. Like,
I think that's why I love baseball. Baseball and life is very similar. The ups and the downs, things take a lot longer than you think they're going to take. They're not always going to turn out the way you want to have them turn out. It's a game of failure. But
mm-hmm.
if you can go back into the dugout after every at bat, look back at what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and reflect and get better, you're going to be good. And I think that whether you're a business owner or a leader, I think that's really important. And Jamey, looking at good pieces of advice, most everybody that's listening to this is a leader, they're a coach, they're a business owner. Any advice you want to leave us with?
um I think the biggest thing, advice wise, and we tell our kids this literally every day when they leave the house, we'll say, do the right thing. And they say, no matter what, back to us, um, is to know what it is that is the right thing for what, and that's not always easy to figure out. And you may have to spend some time into figuring out what is right, but don't deviate from that path of what's right.
How do you, it's so simple, but that's got to be so hard. My dad
Well,
always told me
it's hard.
make wise decisions. That's what he told me when I left. And I don't know
Yeah.
how well I did there, but yeah, like say that again, do the right thing no matter what.
Yep.
So what does that look like, you think?
So, um, let's say I have this, I have expense reports that I need to fill out and turn in. I know I need to get that done. So the right thing is to just get it done. So instead of putting it off or doing something else, I'm just going to get it done. Or, like my son plays college baseball. He went through the whole COVID thing with, had his senior year canceled and whatever. And he was like, I feel like I just don't want to play anymore. And I said, is that the right thing? You're going to college to play. Is taking a 2-month break the right thing for where you want to be? No. All right. Is taking tomorrow off the right thing? Yeah, probably, because I need to get my head screwed on straight. Okay, great. Then take tomorrow off, and then let's see how the day after that works. So just going through the process of what is your consciousness, the Holy Spirit, whatever, will tell you what the right thing is. The tricky part is listening to it or shutting yourself up enough that you hear what the right thing is, and then being dedicated to actually do that. So if a coworker of mine is having a bad day and I can totally tell that she's having a bad day, do I just let her go? Well, the right thing would be to go up to her and like, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? What's what's going on in your head? What's going on in your life? Instead of just letting it ride and be like, well, I hope she figures it out. Or if I have an athlete who I know is going to need to get back to pitching next week and he's almost there, but he hasn't been in a competitive situation, to tell him, hey, the right thing here is grab a buddy and put him in the box. Pitch to a batter there before you have to go in the game. Oh, okay. That'll make me feel a lot better. That's the right thing to do. So just do that no matter what. Well, I don't have a friend who can stay in the box. All right, well, I'll throw a helmet on. I've seen you pitch. I'm going to need a helmet. I'll stand in the box and you can throw balls past me. I don't care. Like, just do the right thing. Your kids need to both of my kids started out in a public school, and my wife and I said we weren't big advocates of private school, but they both got to a certain point in their high school lives that they're like, I need a more faith-based school, smaller faith-based school. And it was the right thing for them. So we just did it. It cost more money. There was more travel stuff that we had to figure out getting them to and from school, but it was the right thing. And they both thrived as a result of it. So the right thing for any one thing isn't necessarily easy or clear, but it's also not totally unknown. And once you figure out and are dedicated to finding out what that is, then the next step is be dedicated to doing it. What do you remember about our time together and the training and instruction that you got now that helps connect us now 20 years later?
I just remember, I think we had a group of 5 or 6 guys, and we all had a goal. It was all the same goal: play professional baseball. And I think everybody had the goal too of get a college scholarship. So we had 6 guys in a room that all had a very similar goal. It was very crystal clear, and we all aligned and linked arms. Although we weren't even on the same team, we all had the same goal. And we had a coach that pushed us to that goal, and he beat the crap out of us some days. And it was not easy, but we knew the effort and energy that we were putting in is what we needed to do to make that long-term thing happen. And I think that's what it was. And I think a lot of people in life, they lose that connection. Baseball guys, they don't play anymore. They miss the dugout. Do they miss the on the field stuff? I think so, right? But they really miss the team aspect and pushing each other to be our very best version of ourselves. And I think that's what I miss in business. And that's what I try to bring back to business is, what is the goal, team? How are we going to get there? I want you to push me and challenge me, and I'm going to push you and challenge you. And Jamey, you did that with our group. And like I mentioned earlier, I think every single person had a college scholarship. And I believe every single one of us outside of myself played professional baseball. And I told you my reason. It wasn't because of the physical side of it. It was the mental side of it. And I think if I had a sports psychologist back then, maybe it could have been different. But I definitely got the most out of my body because you set up a culture that, hey, team, what are your goals? This is what we're going to do to get there. When it gets hard, we just kept pushing forward.
Well, and that's one of the things in business in general is, especially if you've had an experience in athletics, you remember those times when your workout paid off. You remember the wins. Sometimes you remember a heartbreaking loss. But the things that we often forget are the sort of in between times. I had to get up and I had to go to practice. It wasn't a great practice, but we still went. Or I got up and I went to the cage and I got in 300 swings and I was frustrated on 299 of them. But you did it. And that helped you learn for the next time. And maybe the next time was a breakthrough that you do remember. But in business, it's tough because it's an everyday thing, much like baseball and training for golf. It's an everyday thing, which is great because you're always going to have another chance tomorrow. But it's also sometimes frustrating because not every day is a good day. So you have to get through that day. And that persistence and sticking with it and knowing that what I did today might set the foundation for a success tomorrow, but today's done. I was like, let's get rid of that. If we did it, we're moving on. The other hard thing too about athletics versus business is typically in athletics, we have a very defined start of the season, end of the season, off season. So there's always a reset. So sometimes, and I found this for myself just to keep from getting burned out, I need times in the year where it's essentially an off season. It's the end of the season, championship's over. I'm going to take a day, a week, whatever. I'm going to do something maybe a little bit different, reset, and then start the next season. Because if you just keep going day after day after day, year after year after year, and it all seems like one, it gets really drawn out. There's no real reset. All right, now we're going to set our goals. Some businesses do that based on fiscal year, or for us, it's easy to kind of reset in that like September 1st range, because that's kind of the beginning of our off season for baseball and softball. So August, we're kind of chill, like, all right, we're going to reset, we're going to plan, and then we get going again September, and then we go gangbusters September through basically beginning of April. We kind of refocus on our players' in-season times, get through the summer, and then we reset in August again. So we have signed it, sort of developed one season to the next season to the next season. So helps us just mentally to reset. So, and that we have that luxury because our clients have that built into their lives. But if you're just a regular business where every day kind of seems the same, then finding some sort of endpoint, a little bit of off season might be really helpful to try to kind of recharge your passion.
That's so good. And I just love the way you're talking, because if we can figure out the things that we love about baseball and translate that into our lives and our business, I think it's really good. And, that philosophy that you just shared, I think is something that, that is good for anybody to work into their lives. So that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Jamey. Well, how does somebody get a hold of you? What are you up to now? ProX Athlete Development. How would somebody learn more if they're in the Indy area or even outside of Indianapolis?
Yeah, our URL for ProX is proxathlete.com. I always welcome emails at jgordon, jgordon at proxathlete.com. And I'm on Twitter on Dr. Gordon PT, Instagram, Dr. Gordon PT. So wherever.
That's great. Well, I'll make sure to summarize all this in the show notes, put all those links in there. And thanks, Jamey, for joining us on the Dugout CEO.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hope you're doing well. Take care.
Dugout Nation, what a show with Jamey Gordon. So good to reconnect with him. Here are my big 3 takeaways that I learned from Jamey. Do the right thing no matter what. Have a group of people around you that you can be open and honest with, that can be open and honest with you. Surround yourself with people that have similar values and people that are willing to ask you tough questions and hold you accountable. Number 2, treat your business like you would the baseball season. In business, it often feels like it's one long season that never ends. It goes on day after day. Work to find a pace to your business. Learn to take breaks like you would in the All-Star break. Do you need to plan 3 or 4 days off right now in your business to refresh? Learn how to work hard and stay focused like you would during the pennant chase. But also, when do you need to take a total break, refresh, and renew like you would for the off season? When is your All-Star break? When is your off season? Run your business like you would a baseball season. And number 3, why is baseball fun? Well, if you're on a good team, everyone is aligned, you have one goal, one vision, everybody is bought in, it's fun. But why in business is this not often the case? Usually there's a misalignment on goals and roles. If you were able to get everybody in your business, like you would a baseball team, aligned on one goal, everybody understands the position they play, and everyone works hard, challenges each other, and celebrates the wins, reflects on the losses, you will be better. Win more and have more fun. Create that same type of atmosphere that you had on your most favorite team ever in business, and things will be more fun.